Assalamualaikum, hello. So in this lecture, we're going to cover chapter 10, which is on crisis communication. Okay, basically, we have had mentioned crisis communication in other chapters as well, but this one would be more specific on, for instance, communicating in times of crisis, what to do in times of crisis. Yeah, although uh, things may be different depending on what type of crisis it is. But almost always the basic guideline would be as per what we will be discussing in this chapter. So first and foremost, crisis is it actually affects everyone almost every day, from as little things as deciding on what clothes to wear can become a crisis for a person. Okay, so it depends on how the person reacts towards it, yeah, or how to what extent that a person is well prepared to face a crisis. Okay, so of course it is something that everyone can relate to, from the death of a close relative to a car theft, of course, broken heart, earthquake, crisis that involves other devastation, yeah? And especially worse when it takes away lives. All right, so in businesses and organizations also face crisis. Yeah, it could be a major crisis that may cause the whole organization or company to shut down or to face bankruptcy, or a crisis sometimes may be orang kata apa, a rainbow after the rain. Yeah, it may be a call for a new startup, for a new a fresh start for a certain organization. Okay, so organization faces crisis, of course, from earlier in history. We learned that companies such as Exxon Valdez, TWA Flight, even for Malaysia is MH 370, MH 117, yeah, Cadbury, you name it. Yeah, different types of organization will face different type of crisis. Yeah, so some companies, yeah, may result to again bankruptcy, or if it is in the case of products, yeah, products may be need to recall, yeah, from the consumer purchasing line. Okay, so what differs is that maybe about 30-40 years ago, yeah, such event may not receive national attention because the limitation of technologies and also limitation of the widespread of information. But now, um, um, it is more challenging, because when sometimes when crisis hits, it does not even take a minute or two for the word to reach other people. Yeah, because of, again, social media, internet, citizen journalists. Yeah, people who have power in their hand in terms of smartphone and also internet connection, right? So because of this, corporate crisis is sometimes covered in a matter of minutes and or hours, yeah, by the national and of course international media, that may be broadcasting this via a webcast over the internet. Right, so this calls for a more sophisticated way or method or strategies, yeah, in trying to curb, yeah, bad news from turning sour, or from help stopping it from spreading even further to worsen the situation. Okay, so a more sophisticated media environment, as well as a new emphasis on technology in business, is much needed, and this it means that it requires a different or a more amplified way to respond to a certain crisis. Okay, so sometimes organization may also face crisis that is beyond their control. For example, it is caused by nature. Okay, tsunami or hurricane strikes your office building, your factory, or a plant, or the farm that you are working on. Yeah, sometimes things like this cannot be avoided. Yeah, but many more crises are caused by human error, negligence, and in some cases it is caused by malicious intent. Yeah, that planning could have never prevented in the first place. Yeah, example yang mudah, ya, MH370, we don't know what happened to it. Yeah, it may be caused by negligence, it may be caused by weather. We didn't know what happened yet. No one is able to answer yet. Yeah, but as for MH117, we know that it was a malicious intent because the plane was shot down. So that became a crisis that could have never been prevented by the organization. Yeah, okay. Now, before going further, one needs to understand what a crisis is. Okay, so a little bit on the definition of a crisis. Crisis is a major catastrophe, yeah, a major, yang besar, that may occur either again naturally or as a result of human error, intervention, or malicious intent. Yeah, devastation can include things that are tangible, such as the destruction of lives and assets, or intangible devastation, yeah, which is sometimes the loss of an organization's credibility or reputation damage. Okay, now the latter outcomes may be the result of the management response to the tangible devastation or the result to human error. Okay, sometimes, which means that sometimes, even though a crisis um, happen, yeah, as a result of human error, but the devastation is more than that in terms of its intangible outcome because of how the organization reacts towards it. Okay, so we will look into this further later. Okay, now while all crises are unique, yeah, they do share some common characteristics that makes it a crisis. Okay, so there are basically four elements that makes a situation a crisis. Number one is the element of surprise. Yeah, element of surprise means it catches you by surprise. Okay, it happens almost unknowingly. It happens sometimes without you even having an intuition about it happening. Okay, so that's number one, the element of surprise. And number two, we can call a situation a crisis when you find that there is insufficient information. Okay, because in times of crisis, it is normal for everyone to be panicked. So we sometimes, even though the information is there, we don't know where it is, or we cannot locate where the information is, or we cannot find the person in charge, yeah, of that information or that specific incident. Okay, that's number two. Now number three, quick pace of event. You will find that from the moment the crisis happen, it will the pace of event, maknanya things that is happening around it will pick up so much pace, yeah, that you sometimes have a snowball effect. Things may become bigger, things may become more intense because there is a quick pace of events. Why? Because it is not only just about the crisis already, it is about the entire surrounding, the people, the technology, the media, definitely, yeah. And this brings us to the fourth characteristic, which is the intense scrutiny. Now, when a crisis happens, there will be definitely intense scrutiny by the media, people affected, by the general public who demands information, yeah, wanting to know what happened, and most definitely it will come from the investment community, yeah, investor community, people who invest, who have stakes in your organization's business operation. Okay, so what makes this difficult for executive is that the element of surprise study is out of control. Yeah, sometimes it leads to the loss of control totally. Yeah, it is hard to think strategically when one is overwhelmed by so many unexpected outside events. Yeah, and this is worsened sometimes by the media frenzy, yeah, that typically surrounds a crisis, and at this moment sometimes it can prompt, yeah, a siege mentality to ensue, causing management to adopt a short-term focus. Yeah, bila kita dalam keadaan yang tersepit, and then we sometimes take short-term measure, which is of course something that we want to avoid in times of crisis. Now, when a crisis hits, the attention shifts, from the normal business as a whole to that crisis specifically. Yes, crisis alone. So it forces all decision making into the shortest time frame. Okay, what do we do next? What do we tell people? Who should be talking to the people, etc. All these kind of questions will come to you at in a very short time frame, at a very quick pace. Okay, so part of the problem in dealing with crisis that organization have tended not to understand or acknowledge how vulnerable they are until a major crisis occur. We always tell ourselves, I don't think this will happen to me, I don't think this can ever occur to our organization. We have taken so many necessary measures, etc. And then some organizations may be in terms, or sorry, in a state of denial, where they feel that there is no way that organization will come to face, yeah, certain crisis. Okay, and of course lack of preparation can make this crisis even more severe. Yeah, and in times of crisis we target to shorten the time, yeah, but because of lack of preparation, sometimes this crisis management can be prolonged, yeah, to a certain extent, yeah, which is very bad for the organization and its business operation. Okay.